Welcome back to the Sacred Arts channel, where we talk about all things from the practical to the sacred. Today, we have an exciting topic, one of my favorites, which is all around fitness and nutrition. We have Rachel Lavin with us today. She wrote the Diaries. It is a wellness expert based in Greenville, South Carolina, with roots in Northern California. She's worked across various locations, including Hawaii and New York City. Rachel began her fitness journey in 2000 as a certified group fitness instructor, later becoming a personal trainer and health coach. In her debut book, The Diaries, she shares her 3 decade struggle with weight and restrictive diets, offering solidarity to others on similar paths. Today, Rachel focuses on empowering women through her 3 pillars of fitness: nourishment, movement, and rest, creating a safe space for all to feel complete within their bodies. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. This is a topic that really interests me because over decades and decades, I have gone up in weight, gone down in weight. I have tried probably every fad diet out there. So it really speaks to my own journey. And I like how you encompass a lot more than just the physical of the movement and the exercise. You talk a lot about nourishment, you talk a lot about rest. Can you share with our listeners a brief overview of the journey as, coming up with these 3 pillars, and how you were able to kind of pour some of this knowledge into the Doughnut Diaries?
Yes, thank you so much. I mean, I'm happy to share with your listeners that, this really kind of started for me at 11 years old, where I knew and I believed that my body was different. So, just like you, I've tried every fad diet, every diet pill, powder, plan, meal plan, exercise plan that you can think of. And I fluctuate in my weight as well. And so then I jump into becoming a personal trainer, and I'm in the fitness industry. And again, just feeding off all the things that society tells you, that the industry itself tells you, until turning 40 years old, having finally achieved what, we as women believe is a perfect body. I was a size 0. I was 40 years old. I was living in New York City. I mean, I should have been the pillar of happiness, and I just wasn't. And I realized it was because I didn't feel complete. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what I liked. I didn't know. And so I took that message to heart, and I decided to just dive in and really start to heal my traumas, and figure out, why do I feel like I have to have this body? And here we are 12 years later, and I feel so much lighter, mentally, emotionally, physically. I feel happy, I feel content, and I no longer binge and restrict and fad diet. Did I have to kind of let my body kind of heal from within? And when I stopped dieting, of course I gained weight. Of course I did. Did I have my moments where I was like, no, this is not what we're supposed to do? But I had to just really just embrace it all. I had to embrace the whole thing and let my body go through those stages. And I I definitely know what it's like to feel that disappointment in yourself, because again, you and I both know what it's like to be in a smaller body and a bigger body.
Mhm.
Do we prefer the smaller body? I'm sure we do. But I have to think about my health, and I have to think about my happiness. And those two things are now what motivate me. But to finish that question, I had to learn that you can't just do the diet. You can't just do the workout. You have to take care of your body as a whole being. And that means resting your body. That means nourishing your body. That means getting enough sleep. That means really being conscious of your stress and, your surroundings. And I always focused on the food part when I was in the throes of dieting or the exercise part. And it didn't become until I became a much more aware being that I knew that I had to consider all those other things.
Mm. I want to thank all of our Patreon members for supporting the podcast and making all of this so possible. When you join the Patreon for just $3 a month, you support the learning and continuous programming of this podcast. Join today to get insights on before and after conversations, extra footage, and extra episodes. Join today on Patreon. Yeah, it's really incredible to have that kind of aha moment. Like it's not just about fitting into society and being a certain size and looking a certain way. And so I'm really interested to understand because one thing is having that aha moment and then it's like, okay, where do I go from there? Like how did you go about like unpacking all of that trauma, unpacking all of those limiting beliefs? So, is there any specific modality that you really gravitated towards?
I think, believe it or not, kind of just learning how to be with myself was pivotal. I did have a wonderful therapist at the time. I did read a handful of amazing books that kind of felt good to me. But everything that I knew that I was running away from, I was like, okay, I need to stay. I need to stay and I need to deal with this. And, traumas from having a biological father I didn't have a relationship with. I mean, and that translated into how you choose your men. I mean, all that seems so cliche, but it was true for me. And I think that once I realized what was the common denominator in all my drama or all my things. It was me, right? So I had to like really get to know Rachel and figure out, what do I want out of this life? Am I going to continue to go through it every single day, struggling with my body and not really experiencing life? I did not want to do that for another 40 years.
Hmm.
And so it was really important for me to simplify, to understand, and to let it go. I really had to become a master at letting things go.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Especially when you're in so much control and because eating in itself is a form of control, right? And so
Mhm.
being able to let go is definitely an art in itself. And it sounds like you had this moment of wanting to stop running and confronting everything that you were like kind of pushing down, which really takes a lot. It's not for the faint of heart, right? And so part of like getting to know ourselves is having this journey of self love because so much of us don't even know how to love ourselves. We spend our entire time in our heads just talking crap about ourselves or how much we're not worthy. So, can you tell us a little bit about your own self love journey and what were some specific steps or practices that helped you transition from that place of like criticism to a genuine place of acceptance?
Yeah, there's two major things that I had to adopt immediately. And the first one was how I spoke to myself. I think that when you put yourself out in the world already in a negative space, uh, yes, I know I'm fat. Don't talk about it. Or am I fat? I mean, just all the things that you just say about yourself to people, to yourself. I had to stop that immediately. And the other thing that goes hand in hand with that was I had to stop putting my value into other people's hands. And that meant like I completely stopped asking people, what do you think of me and my body? Because I had to realize how much of my power I was giving away by doing that, and how much more it separated me from myself because I'm believing all these other people's opinions of what I should be doing instead of figuring it out for myself. And one of the ways that I taught myself how to speak kindly to myself was I bought a package of hot pink Post-its, which I love hot pink, and I wrote 3 things on them that I knew I didn't believe about myself, right? So, I didn't believe I was beautiful. I didn't believe I was smart. I didn't believe I was capable. And I wrote those 3 things in, future tense, so I am, or present tense, and I put them all around my apartment, and I forced myself in the beginning, because I knew I wasn't gonna believe them, to say them out loud at least once a day, maybe twice a day. And I put them in places where I had no choice but to look every day, like my bathroom mirror or my refrigerator or my front door. And it took a few weeks of saying them daily, daily, daily. And sometimes I think I would roll my eyes. But then one morning I was on my way out the door and I was like, I am smart. And it felt good. It felt right. It felt real. And so that's how I knew it was working for me. And my mindset about myself was changing. And
Mm.
then my behavior changed. And it was a just like a really beautiful, like, you know, continuation of that. And I'm able to, I don't have to necessarily put the affirmations, physically anymore, but they are here. And when I have my tough moments, because it's not even a tough day anymore, it's not a tough time, it's a moment. And I'm able to just draw from those and be like, nope, you got this. You are beautiful. Your body is healthy. You're okay right now. Whatever it is that you need to tell yourself, because I think what happens is we have a series of those moments that build and build and build, and then they become a belief. And then, you're totally screwed because you believe all these lies about yourself. And I think that was, for me, a simple way of doing that was changing my mindset.
Yeah. Absolutely. I can definitely identify with that. And just for my audience, like just to get a tiny different perspective, I went through a similar journey that you did. And last year, I finally said, I mean, I was 39 last year. So I was on the precipice of 40. There's something about like this sweet spot that you start to kind of realize, like, hey, I've been living my life according to everybody else's rules, according to what everyone else thinks of me or what I think they think of me. Right. And one of the things that I really examined was why do I have no problem losing weight. I have no problem eating healthy. I know what it takes to do that and it comes fairly easily for me, but I never maintain it. And I had to really dig in deep and figure out for myself, like really go in there and find those core beliefs. And one of my core beliefs that I had forgotten about is that it wasn't safe to be in my body. It wasn't safe
Mhm.
to be thin or light because as a teenager, I almost got abducted, and from that moment on I was just like, nope, I can lose weight all I want, but I'm always going to pack it back on because I just didn't feel safe in my
Oh,
body.
wow.
So I can
Mhm.
definitely identify with what you're saying. Things might be as simple as I'm not smart and or I'm not beautiful, but it can go a lot deeper than that in terms of like some of these things that we've packed away as children, as adolescents, that we may not be realizing that it's still part of our core belief system, which is why we're kind of behaving the way that we do and not able to like be motivated to just be in our body.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that because you're right. I mean, there's so many things that, although as women our stories are similar, there's so many different ways that we get there. And for you to share that, yeah, so I'm thankful for you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your story as well. It resonates so much with me. And, when I think about like the previous version of myself, so like you mentioned feeling betrayed by your body for most of your life. And so I'm wondering, like, when you look back 20s, 30s, in how you felt then and what your perception is now, how has your relationships shifted? How has your own insights that you've gained as you work through this shifted?
Well, I think back when I did feel betrayed by my not only my body, but I used to get angry at my hunger because how can you be in a body that's so fat, but your stomach is begging you for food? I like that just did not compute. And I also, when we talked earlier about how and most of us still believe it's the two things: you eat less, you move more; you exercise, you diet, and that's how you stay small. But it's not just that, especially as we age, especially as women go through, you know, changes, that is just not the truth for any of us. Some people are naturally thin, some people are not. I mean, like all these things we don't even think about considering. So I really had to kind of be at peace with not only myself emotionally, but what does my physical body look like, right? I'm a 5'3" woman. I have boobs and a butt, and I have a tendency to put weight on in my stomach. Like, I have to accept these things. I have to accept these things. And then I exercise and move my body to feel the best in that body instead of I have to work out because I have to burn these calories, or I have to work out because I ate, and I cheated yesterday. Those were my was my mental the way I used to think before. Like I have to work out to punish myself for what I put in my mouth the day before,
Mhm.
or for the entire month of December or whatever. And so to not only learn the truth about the way our bodies work, which was really freeing, but secondly, to accept that this is my body. It's my job to take the best possible care of it and then just live my life. So instead of having those thoughts, like I mentioned earlier, food is just, oh, my stomach's growling. I need to eat lunch. That is true for the most part, but I do want to mention I did have to kind of pay attention to what Rachel, my body needs, because I truly believe that people's eating schedules or eating needs are different. And I'm not one of those people that likes to eat six tiny meals a day. I don't. I like to have a meal. So I like to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And some days I need a snack. Most days I need a snack. So that's what's comfortable for me and how I have, how I do my daily routine. But I think people need to understand where their hunger fits into their life and feed it accordingly.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I'm the same way. I like hearty meals. And I don't know, there's just something about like my energy where I'm just like, if I'm hungry, I need to eat like immediately because
Are
that's
you
what
a
my body needs.
Sagittarius?
I'm a Leo, but
Uh,
I do have some Sagittarius tendencies. But
yeah.
also, there's this thing called human design. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. And
Mhm.
I'm a manifesting generator. And what they say is manifesting generators need a lot of snacks and need to eat immediately when they're hungry because that's just part of how their energy works in their human design. And so that made a lot of sense. I was like, "Oh, wow." It's
Yeah.
not just about, like, what my body needs, but it's how my energy gets nourished and, all the hormonal imbalances that happens when you're not nourishing your body.
Yeah.
I'm actually very curious about like how have your relationships changed, whether that's friendships, romantic, family. Like there's something that happens when we shift our perspective and we start to set boundaries and we start to really own who we are, where some people might feel confronted or you might even deepen some relationships. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I can honestly say the fact that I don't think about myself every second of every day, I'm able to be a better friend. I'm able to be in a relationship with my boyfriend and we have a partnership. Like I didn't know how to do that before.
Hmm.
And with my family, yes, I've been able to set boundaries and to have better relationships with them. I just think it's just so fascinating how we go through a lot of our life and really don't know ourselves. And that really does affect our relationships, because how are you going to be a good friend or a good girlfriend or wife if you don't know yourself? It's just, I love to say we as humans take something that's so simple and make it so hard.
It's so true. It's so true because most of the time we're in our heads trying to please everyone else and in our heads about like, okay, am I good enough? Right? On all levels. And
Mhm.
so seeing that change in the way that you described it, I believe it, like deepening those relationships and just being a lot more present is what it is.
Right. But it's also learning how to let other people be who they are. And I think we're always in such conflict with other people because you assume they're supposed to be a certain way. Well, you're my boyfriend. You better do this and this and this. And it's like, he's his own person or she's their own person or my mother's her own person. Like I don't have to control it. I don't have to have expectations. I don't have to get offended. Like for me, I truly despise that expression. Like I'm offended. Why? I mean, you're wasting so much time and energy being offended by somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to learn to let all that go is like pretty amazing.
Yeah. It's liberating, isn't it?
Hmm.
I noticed that a lot of your messaging is, encouraging us to age with gratitude, for what our bodies are capable of. Can you share some like key aspects of this perspective? I'm very intrigued by this because I find myself kind of worrying about the aging process, like what's next in the 40s, right? And just curious on how it's influenced your own outlook on aging.
Well, I'm sure a lot of your listeners are hearing the term longevity because that's the newest and greatest buzzword around. But there is some validity to it. And the bottom line is this: look at it in the most simple of terms. We're all uh, getting older and staying alive longer. So, do you want to take those years and spend them in and out of the hospital, in and out of doctors, on pills, and not active? Or do you want to spend those years, hanging out with your grandkids, hanging out with your kids, going on group trips to Italy? You have that choice by how you take care of your vessel. And unfortunately, in our society, the go to solution is always drugs, it's always surgeries. And do I believe 100% either way? No. Sometimes your body needs help. I get that. But a lot of times you can help yourself. And I just find it so fascinating that that is not our go-to mentality.
Yeah.
And for me, aging looks like in my 50s where I'm at now, I still feel like 25, especially like my maturity. And so I have all the expectations and hopes that in 30 years I'm still in the gym and I'm still doing this and I'm still doing that because I've learned how to take care of myself in the most efficient way. At least I hope so.
I love that. It's an everyday, active, mindful type of mindset, I think, right? To continue our journey because I mean anything can happen and we might revert one day, but the next day we get up and we do it all over again. And so I think that that's what it's about. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
As an author and advocate for self love, what impact do you hope your story will have on other women?
That is an interesting question because for last year I was kind of struggling with why are people fighting me? Why don't you want this freedom? But then I realized how ingrained it is to feel the way we feel about our bodies. And I have to take a step back and be patient with people because it's not an overnight switch. It's not like, oh, yeah, you mean I can too eat a donut and not feel guilt and shame about it? Of course you can, but getting there here is a longer road. And so I really have simplified the fact that my book, my story is a tool for you to inspire you that you can have it if you want.
Mm.
So I hope that made sense.
Yes. No, I love that. It's accepting people for where they're at developmentally. And,
Mhm.
not everybody is quite there yet. For both you and I, it took reaching 40 and deciding that we needed to understand who we were and why we were continuing this pattern. And so people will get there. It's just about like in their own timing, right? So I love
Mhm.
that. How do you inspire and encourage them to pursue a life of free from restrictive dieting?
I think when I get into conversations with women and I still hear like the same old lies about calorie intake or this food is bad, I just sometimes insert things like, hey, I just invite you to maybe think that having some olive oil in your salad is great for brain function. Or, hey, how do you feel after you eat a piece of sourdough bread? I guess the whole way of approaching it these days is going to be like an invitation to think for yourself. Because I don't think that when it comes to diet and exercise, that's why I was a very successful trainer for so long because people want me to do all that work for them.
Yeah.
They just want to show up
Yeah.
and have the results, right? They don't want to think about it. They don't want to research. They don't care. They just like, you train me, my body gets smaller, boom, we're done. But as a health coach, it's like, I'm here to hold your hand, to guide you along your path while you figure it out.
Mhm.
So for me, that shift is super interesting and not so easy all the time, but I'm doing my best to come at a place that I'm not judging you. I mean, listen, I did the same roller coaster for 40 years. I get it. But at the same time, I do read my audience. And if they're just not there at all, and that's not even an option that they want to think about, I don't push. I don't push.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds great. If you can convey one important message to women who may be struggling, or I mean, to men for that matter, right? Who may be struggling with self love and body image, what would it be?
Just to be open to the fact that you have been and are being lied to by the beauty and diet industry, and just be open to that idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel like I could talk about this subject all day long. But I wanna take a little bit of time to just to let people know where can they find your book, what events do you have coming up, and where can people follow you?
Absolutely. You can find my book on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com, The Doughnut Diaries with a UGH. I am on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn under Rachel Lavin Lifestyle and Wellness. And as far as anything coming up right now, I am working on getting my workshop nice and tight, and then I will announce that a little bit later.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. And I will link all of those down below to make it easy for our audience to find and follow you. And I want to thank our audience today for listening in. If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know down below, write us a comment, and like and subscribe. I want to thank all of our Patreon members for supporting the podcast and making all of this so possible. When you join the Patreon for just $3 a month, you support the learning and continuous programming of this podcast. Join today to get insights on before and after conversations, extra footage, and extra episodes. Join today on Patreon.